Awesome. Let me see if I can hear myself. Yeah. Okay. Let me move this. I think that's good. Wait, no. Alright. Hopefully I won't get any notifications that make me jump. Hi, I'm Rachel. Welcome to my book club. Vampires are my special interest book club. Primarily, we do lives here, and they are typically reading short stories from various vampire anthologies that I've collected or found. Currently, we are not quite halfway through Dracula's Brood over here, published in like 1987 or something. Should be relatively easy to find. If you want to read it yourself, I got mine from thrift books. What else do we do? In between books, I like to go over like silly little things that pique my interest, like reading from encyclopedias or scholarly journals, because it's fun being a nerd. We're not doing that today, though. Like I said, we are partway through Dracula's Brood. Also, if anyone is sensitive to noise, I thought I had my box fan going. Hopefully I don't get too hot. I might have to turn that partway on. But my AC is on, and I will at some point get up and turn on the box fan so I don't roast. It may say that it's September 1st, but we all know with climate change that like fall doesn't start until like November or something. Like, it doesn't get chilly for way longer than it should. Whatever, that's not the point. So if you're sensitive to that kind of noise, this isn't going to be the stream for you. I don't want to die of overheating. For your sensitive ears, maybe get the audiobook instead. Okay. I, for real, legit thought I was fully prepared for this stream. I have a little snack bowl of fruit because I get hungry in the middle, and then I start thinking too hard about cheeseburgers, and I lose my train of thought in the middle of reading. So I brought a snack this time. I have my coffee. I have an actual full thing of water. Forgot the box fan. I'm never fully prepared for anything. God damn it. Is there anything I want to say? I don't think so. Okay. May as well get started then. These stories seem to be shorter. These next couple seem to be shorter than the first few streams we've been doing, so we're probably gonna get through more today than we have. The first one is Good Lady Ducayne, which we have read already on this channel. I'm not gonna skip it. I don't know. Very few people watch me, let alone go back and watch. Oh my god, I fully forgot. Wow. I can't believe I forgot this. We actually did stop in the middle of a story because the story was so long. Does anyone remember what was happening at the beginning? I didn't even remember we were reading it. The Parasite by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I'm not used to stopping in the middle of a story. Usually I read the entire way, but I remember this. I didn't want to go like 3 full hours again, so I stopped it in the middle. Let's see. The Parasite, by Conan Doyle, known for his obviously Sherlock stuff, but apparently he was a friend of Stoker, or at least traveled in the same circles as him, and his story possibly came out before Bram Stoker's Dracula. And they may have inspired each other, which is very cool and interesting to know. Right. The main character is a scientist, a sociologist, I believe, and he has always firmly not believed in new agey psychic stuff like tarot cards and hypnotism and things like that, but he met someone who proved to him that she can control people by controlling his fiance. Oh yeah, I like to be small. Miss Penelosa. God, yeah, that rings a bell. It was hard to say that time too. Penelosa. And he started working with her, and she was controlling his mind. And he writes everything in a journal, so you can see how it's affecting him more than he can see that it's affecting him. But he does come to realize it and become more fearful of this woman and what she's doing to him, and he tries to quit their psychic studies, but her control over him makes it so he can't quit. The stream is still up if you want to go back and get reacquainted, but that's my understanding, and I don't want to reread this on stream. So picking up where we left off, there's danger afoot. Maybe I will be reading less stories than I anticipated. If this one was such a doozy, we had to cut it in half. Darn it. Whatever, it's fine, it's cool. Vampires are cool. Right, there was also the question of, is she actually a vampire? Because she seems to... you know what, I remember rethinking this afterwards. At the beginning, when she first was messing with him, he said he felt like refreshed and energized from working with her, but it's clear over time that he is losing himself. It would make sense for this to be a fun play on a vampire story, a psychic vampire, which I think they said at the... I don't know. I went back to look at the little bio at the beginning. Whatever. We're moving on. Part 3 out of 4 of The Parasite. Forgot to move my keyboard so I don't mess anything up. 3. I read over my notes of what the woman said when she spoke about her powers. There is one point which fills me with dismay. She implies that when the influence is slight, the subject knows what he is doing, but cannot control himself. Whereas, when it is strongly exerted, he is absolutely unconscious. Now, I have always known what I did, though less so last night than on the previous occasions. That seems to mean that she has never yet exerted her full powers upon me. Was ever a man so placed before? If you hear, like, weird crunching noises, my cats are eating in the kitchen right over there. I fill up a treat bowl, a ball, and you can, like, twist it to open holes. But I just put it with dry food because they have such a bad habit of, especially Buttons, of eating too fast and puking. So she rolls her little ball to get her normal amount of dry food. Anyway. Yes, perhaps there was, and very near me too. Charles Sadler must know something of this. His vague words of warning take a meaning now. Oh, if I had only listened to him then, before I helped by these repeated sittings to forge the links of the chain which binds me. But I will see him today. I will apologize to him for having treated his warning so lightly. I will see if he can advise me. 4 p.m. No, he cannot. I have talked with him, and he showed such surprise at the first words in which I tried to express my unspeakable secret that I went no further. As far as I can gather, by hints and inferences rather than by any statement, His own experience was limited to some words or looks, such as I have myself endured. His abandonment of Miss Penelosa is in itself a sign that he was never really in her toils. Oh, if he only knew his escape. He has to thank his phlegmatic Saxon temperament for it. I am dark and Celtic, and this hag's clutch is deep in my nerves. Shall I ever get it out? Shall I ever be the same man that I was just one short fortnight ago? Let me consider what I had better do. I cannot leave the university in the middle of the term. If I were free, my course would be obvious. I should start at once and travel in Persia. But would she allow me to start? And could her influence not reach me in Persia and bring me back to within touch of her crutch? I can only find out the limits of this hellish power by my own bitter experience. I will fight and fight and fight, and what can I do more? I know very well that about 8 o'clock tonight, that craving for her society, that irresistible restlessness will come upon me. How shall I overcome it? What shall I do? I must make it impossible for me to leave the room. I shall lock the door and throw the key out of the window. But then, what am I to do in the morning? Never mind about the morning. I must at all costs break this chain which holds me. April 9th. Victory! I have done splendidly. At 7 o'clock last night, I took a hasty dinner, and then locked myself up in my bedroom and dropped the key into the garden. I chose a cheery novel and lay in bed for 3 hours trying to read it, but really in a horrible state of trepidation, expecting every instant that I should become conscious of the impulse. Nothing of the sort occurred, however, and I awoke this morning with the feeling that a black nightmare had been lifted off me. Perhaps the creature realized what I had done and understood that it was useless to try to influence me. At any rate, I have beaten her once, and if I can do it once, I can do it again. It was most awkward about the key in the morning. Luckily, there was an undergardener below, and I asked him to throw it up. No doubt he thought I had just dropped it. I will have doors and windows screwed up and 6 stout men to hold me down in my bed before I will surrender myself to be hag-ridden in this way. Yes, you're here to cause chaos, huh? Do you like the story so far? What are your reviews? Please don't knock anything over. You don't need any grapes. They're gonna kill you. Come on. Yes, I know. Yeah, I know. Go find a bed and take a nap. I had a note from Mrs. Marden this afternoon asking me to go round and see her. I intended to do so in any case, but had not expected to find bad news waiting for me. It seems that the Armstrongs, from whom Agatha had expectations, are due home from Adelaide in the Aurora, and that they have written to Mrs. Marden and her to meet them in town. They will probably be away for a month or 6 weeks, and as the Aurora is due on Wednesday, they must go at once, tomorrow if they are ready in time. My consolation is that when we meet again, there will be no more parting between Agatha and me. I want you to do one thing, Agatha, said I, when we were alone together. If you should happen to meet Miss Penelosa, either in town or here, you must promise me never again to allow her to mesmerize you. Agatha opened her eyes. Why, it was only the other day that you were saying how interesting it all was, and how determined you were to finish your experiments. I know, but I have changed my mind since then. And you won't have it any more? No. I am so glad, Austin. You can't think how pale and worn you have been lately. It was really our principal objection to going to London now that we did not wish to leave you when you were so pulled down. And your manner has been so strange occasionally, especially that night when you left poor Professor Pratt Haldane to play dummy. I am convinced that these experiments are very bad for your nerves. I think so too, dear. And for Miss Penelos's nerves as well. You have heard that she is ill? No. Mrs. Wilson told us so last night. She described it as a nervous fever. Professor Wilson is coming back this week, and of course Mrs. Wilson is very anxious that Miss Penelosa should be well again then, for he has quite a program of experiments which he is anxious to carry out. I was glad to have Agatha's promise, for it was enough that this woman should have one of us in her clutch. On the other hand, I was disturbed to hear about Miss Penelosa's illness. It rather discounts the victory which I appeared to win last night. I remember that she said that loss of health interfered with her power. That may be why I was precarious tonight, and see what comes of it. No. Skipped a sentence. That may be why I was able to hold my own so easily. Well, well, I must take the same precautions tonight and see what comes of it. I am childishly frightened when I think of her. April 10th. All went well last night. I was amused at the gardener's face when I had again to hail him this morning and ask him to throw up my key. I shall get a name among the servants if this sort of thing goes on. But the great point is that I stayed in my room without the slightest inclination to leave it. I do believe that I am shaking myself clear of this incredible bond. Or is it only that the woman's power is in abeyance until she recovers her strength? I can but pray for the best. The Mardens left this morning, and the brightness seems to have gone out of the spring sunshine. And yet it is very beautiful also as it gleams on the green chestnuts opposite my windows, and gives a touch of gaiety to the heavy, lichen-mottled walls of the old colleges. How sweet and gentle and soothing is nature! Who would think that there lurked in her also such vile forces, such odious possibilities? For of course I understand that this dreadful thing which has sprung out at me is neither supernatural nor even preternatural. No, it is a natural force which this woman can use, and society is ignorant of. The mere fact that it ebbs with her strength shows how entirely it is subject to physical laws. If I had time, I might probe it to the bottom and lay my hands upon its antidote. But you cannot tame the tiger when you are beneath his claws. You can but try to writhe away from him. Ah, when I look in the glass and see my own dark eyes and clear-cut Spanish face, I long for a vitriol splash or a bout of the smallpox. One or the other might have saved me from this calamity. Ah, smallpox, known to keep people from being mentally controlled by old ladies. I am inclined to think that I may have trouble tonight. There are two things which make me fear so. One is that I met Mrs. Wilson in the street, and she tells me that Ms. Penelosa is better, though still weak. I find myself wishing in my heart that the illness had been her last. The other is that Professor Wilson comes back in a day or two, and his presence would act as a constraint upon her. I should not fear our interviews if a third person were present. For both these reasons, I have a persistiment of trouble tonight, and I shall take the same precautions as before. April 10th. No, thank God. All went well last night. I really could not face the gardener again. I locked my door and thrust the key underneath it so that I had to ask the maid to let me out in the morning. But the precaution was really not needed, for I never had any inclination to go out at all. 3 evenings in succession at home. I am surely near the end of my troubles, for Wilson will be home again either today or tomorrow. Shall I tell him of what I have gone through or not? I am convinced that I should not have the slightest sympathy from him. He would look upon me as an interesting case and read a paper about me at the next meeting of the Psychical Society, in which he would gravely discuss the possibility of my being a deliberate liar and weigh it against the chances of my being in an early stage of lunacy. No, I shall get no comfort out of Wilson. I am feeling wonderfully fit and well. I don't think I ever lectured with greater spirit. Oh, and if I could only get this shadow off my life, how happy I should be. Young, fairly wealthy, and the front rank of my profession, engaged to a beautiful and charming girl. Have I not everything which a man could ask for? Only one thing to trouble me, but what a thing it is. I don't know, maybe some dick. Sorry. Midnight. I shall go mad. Yes, that will be the end of it. I shall go mad. I am not far from it now. My head throbs as I rest it on my hot hand. I am quivering all over like a scared horse. Oh, what a night I have had, and yet I have some cause to be satisfied also. At the risk of becoming the laughingstock of my own servant, I again slipped my key under the door, imprisoning myself for the night. Then, finding it too early to go to bed, I lay down with my clothes on and began to read one of Dumas' novels. Suddenly, I was gripped and dragged from the couch. It is only thus that I can describe the overpowering nature of the force which pounced upon me. I clawed at the coverlet. I clung to the woodwork. I believe that I screamed out in my frenzy. It was all useless, hopeless. I must go. There was no way out of it. It was only at the outset that I resisted. The force soon became too overmastering for that. I thank goodness that there were no watchers there to interfere with me. I could not have answered for myself if there had been. And, besides the determination to get out, there came to me also the keenest and coolest judgment in choosing my means. I lit a candle and endeavored, kneeling in front of the door, to pull the key through with the feather end of a quill pen. It was just too short and pushed it further away. Then, with quiet persistence, I got a paper knife out of one of the drawers, and with that I managed to draw the key back. I opened the door, stepped into my study, took a photograph of myself from the bureau, wrote something across it, placed it in the inside pocket of my coat, and then started off for Wilson's. It was all wonderfully clear, and yet disassociated from the rest of my life, as the incidents of even the most vivid dream might be. A peculiar double consciousness possessed me. There was the predominant alien will, which was bent upon drawing me to the side of its owner, and there was the feebler, protesting personality, which I recognized as being myself, tugging feebly at the overmastering impulse, as a lead terrier might at its chain. I can remember recognizing these two conflicting forces, but I recall nothing of my walk, nor of how I was admitted to the house. Very vivid, however, is my recollection of how I met Miss Penelosa. She was reclining on the sofa in the little boudoir in which our experiments had usually been carried out. Her head was rested on her hand, and a tiger skin rug had been partly drawn over her face. She looked up expectantly as I entered, and, as the lamplight fell upon her face, I could see that she was very pale and thin, with dark hollows under her eyes. She smiled at me and pointed to a stool beside her. It was with her left hand that she pointed, and I, running eagerly forward, seized it. I loathe myself as I think of it, and pressed it passionately to my lips. Then, seating myself upon the stool, and still retaining her hand, I gave her the photograph which I had brought with me, and talked and talked and talked of my love for her, of my grief over her illness, of my joy at her recovery, of the misery it was to be absent a single evening from her side. She lay quietly looking down at me with imperious eyes and her provocative smile. Once I remember that she passed her hand over my hair as one caresses a dog, and it gave me pleasure, the caress. I thrilled under it. I was her slave, body and soul, and for the moment I rejoiced in my slavery. Pause to drink. And then came the blessed change. Never tell me that there is not a providence. I was on the brink of perdition. My feet were on the edge. Was it a coincidence that at that very instant help should come? No, no, no. There is a providence, and its hand has drawn me back. There is something in the universe stronger than this devil woman with her tricks. Ah, what a balm to my heart it is to think so. As I looked up at her, I was conscious of a change in her. Her face, which had been pale before, was now ghastly. Her eyes were dull, and the lids drooped heavily over them. Above all, the look of serene confidence had gone from her features. Her mouth had weakened. Her forehead had puckered. She was frightened and undecided, and as I watched the change, my own spirit fluttered and struggled, trying hard to tear itself from the grip which held it, a grip which, from moment to moment, grew less secure. "Austin," she whispered, "I have tried to do too much. I was not strong enough. I have not recovered yet from my illness, but I could not live longer without seeing you. You won't leave me, Austin? This is only a passing weakness. If you will only give me 5 minutes, I shall be myself again. Give me the small decanter from the table in the window." But I had regained my soul. With her waning strength, the influence had cleared away from me and left me free. And I was aggressive, bitterly, fiercely aggressive. For once at least, I could make this woman understand what my real feelings toward her were. My soul was filled with a hatred as bestial as the love against which it was a reaction. It was the savage, murderous passion of the revolted serf. I could have taken the crutch from her side and beaten her face in with it. She threw her hands up as if to avoid a blow and cowered away from me into the corner of the settee. Settee. I don't know. "The brandy," she gasped. "The brandy." I took the decanter and poured it over the roots of a palm in the window. Then I snatched the photograph from her hand and tore it into 100 pieces. "You vile woman," I said. "If I did my duty to society, you would never leave this room alive." "I love you, Austin. I love you," she wailed. "Yes," I cried. "And Charles Sadler before, and how many others before that." "Charles Sadler," she gasped. "He has spoken to you? So Charles Sadler. Her voice came through her white lips like a snake's hiss. "Yes, I know you, and others shall know you too. You shameless creature, you knew how I stood, and yet you used your vile power to bring me to your side. You may, perhaps, do so again, but at least you will remember that you have heard me say that I love Miss Marden from the bottom of my soul, and that I loathe you, abhor you. The very sight of you and the sound of your voice fill me with horror and disgust. The thought of you is repulsive. That is how I feel toward you, and if it pleases you by your tricks to draw me again to your side as you have done tonight, you will at least, I should think, have little satisfaction in trying to make a lover out of a man who has told you his real opinion of you. You may put what words you will into my mouth, but you cannot help remembering." I stopped, for the woman's head had fallen back, and she had fainted. She could not bear to hear what I had to say to her. What a glow of satisfaction it gives me to think that, come what may, in the future she can never misunderstand my true feelings toward her. But what will occur in the future? What will she do next? I dare not think of it. Oh, if only I could hope that she will leave me alone. But when I think of what I said to her, never mind. I have been stronger than she for once. Do you ever wonder in these older stories, like 1800s and before, when women faint, like, did women actually faint that often in like real life, or was just a literary trope? Or were we like, our diet's so poor? It's just so interesting to me that like women had fainting couches and things. Like, we were delicate, well, white women, right? We were such delicate creatures that we fainted all the time. But like, did we, or were we faking it? You know what I mean? I'm sure if I tried to Google it, I would not get an answer. Did women actually faint as often as they said they do in literature? White women, wealthy white women, or well-off ones at least. Do you think like working class women were like, I don't know how many books I've read from 1800s and up, and like the class strata and the amount of times they fainted. That'd be such an interesting little study. Completely irrelevant. I had to swallow. Okay. April 11th. I hardly slept last night and found myself in the morning so unstrung and feverish that I was compelled to ask Pratt Haldane to do my lecture for me. It is the first that I have ever missed. I rose at midday, but my head is aching and my hands quivering and my nerves in a pitiable state. Who should come round this evening but Wilson? He has just come back from London, where he has lectured, read papers, convened meetings, exposed the medium, conducted a series of experiments on thought transference, entertained Professor Richet of Paris, spent hours gazing into a crystal, and obtained some evidence as to the passage of matter through matter. All this he poured into my ears in a single gust. But you, he cried at last, you are not looking well, and Miss Penelosa is quite prostrated today. How about the experiments? I have abandoned them. Tut, tut. Why? The subject seems to me a dangerous one. Out came his big brown notebook. This is of great interest, said he. What are your grounds for saying that it is a dangerous one? Please give your facts in chronological order. What approximate dates and names of reliable witnesses with their permanent addresses? First of all, I asked, would you tell me whether you have collected any cases where the mesmerist has gained a command over the subject and has used it for evil purposes? Dozens, he cried exultantly. Crime by suggestion? I don't mean suggestion. I mean where a sudden impulse comes from a person at a distance, an uncontrollable impulse. Obsession, he shrieked, in an ecstasy of delight. It is the rarest condition. We have 8 cases, 5 well attested. You don't mean to say, his exultation made him hardly articulate. No, I don't, said I. Good evening. You will excuse me, but I am not very well tonight. And so at last I got rid of him, still brandishing his pencil and his notebook. My troubles may be bad to hear, but at least it is better to hug them to myself than to have myself exhibited by Wilson, like a freak at a fair. He has lost sight of human beings. Everything to him is a case and a phenomena. Will die before I speak to him again upon the matter. April 12th. Yesterday was a blessed day of quiet. I enjoyed an uneventful night. Wilson's presence is a great consolation. What can the woman do now? Surely, when she has heard me say that what I have said, she will conceive the same disgust for me which I have for her. She could not, no, she could not, desire to have a lover who had insulted her so. No, I believe that I am free from her love. But how about her hate? Might she not use these powers of hers for revenge? Tut! Why should I frighten myself over shadows? She will forget about me, and I shall forget about her, and all will be well. April 13th. My nerves have quite recovered their tone. I really believe that I have conquered the creature, but I must confess to living in some suspense. She is well again, for I hear that she was driving with Mrs. Wilson in the High Street in the afternoon. April 14th. I do wish I could get away from the place altogether. I shall fly to Agatha's side the very day that the term closes. I suppose it is pitiably weak of me, but this woman gets upon my nerves most terribly. I have seen her again, and I have spoken with her. It was just after lunch, and I was smoking a cigarette in my study when I heard the step of my servant Murray in the passage. Murray? I was languidly conscious that a second step was audible behind, and had hardly troubled myself to speculate who it might be, when suddenly a slight noise brought me out of my chair with my skin creeping with apprehension. I had never particularly observed before what sort of sound the tapping of a crutch was, but my quivering nerves told me that I heard it now in the sharp wooden clack which alternated with the muffled thud of the footfall. Another instant, and my servant had shown her in. I did not attempt the usual conventions of society, nor did she. I simply stood with a smoldering cigarette in my hand and gazed at her. She, in turn, looked silently at me, and at her look I remembered how, in these very pages, I had tried to define the expression of her eyes, whether they were furtive or fierce. Today they were fierce, coldly and inexorably so. "Well," said she at last, "are you still of the same mind as when I saw you last?" "I have always been of the same mind." "Let us understand each other, Professor Gilroy," said she slowly. "I am not a very safe person to trifle with, as you should realize by now. It was you who asked me to enter into a series of experiments with you. It was you who won my affections. It was you who professed your love for me. It was you who brought me your own photograph with words of affection upon it. And, finally, it was you who on the very same evening thought it fit to insult me most outrageously, addressing me as no man has ever dared to speak to me yet. Tell me that those words came from you in a moment of passion, and I am prepared to forget and forgive them. You did not mean what you said, Austin? You do not really hate me?" I might have pitied this deformed woman. Such a longing for love broke suddenly through the menace of her eyes. But then I thought of what I had gone through, and my heart set like flint. "If ever you heard me speak of love," said I, "you know very well that it was your own voice which spoke, and not mine. The only words of truth which I have ever been able to say to you are those which you heard when last we met. I know, someone has set you against me. It was he," she tapped with her crutch upon the floor. "Well, you know very well that I could bring you this minute crouching like a spaniel to my feet. No. Well, you know very well that I could bring you this minute crouching like a spaniel to my feet. You will not find me again in my hour of weakness, when you can insult me with impunity. Have a care what you are doing, Professor Gilroy. You stand in a terrible position. You have not yet realized the hold which I have upon you." I shrugged my shoulders and turned away. "Well," said she, after a pause, "if you despise my love, I must see what can be done with fear. You smile, but the day will come when you will come screaming to me for pardon. Yes, you will grovel on the ground before me, proud as you are, and you will curse the day that ever you turned me from your best friend into your most bitter enemy. Have a care, Professor Gilroy." I saw a white hand shaking in the air, and a face which was scarcely human, so convulsed was it with passion. An instant later, she was gone, and I heard the quick hobble and tap receding down the passage. I feel as though, possibly, the only thing this man can do is kill her. Okay, I mean, there's things he can do. He can talk to people, but like, shit. Oh my god, that would be terrifying. I can't wait. But she has left a weight upon my heart. Vague presentiments of coming misfortune lay heavily upon me. I try in vain to persuade myself that these are only words of empty anger. I can remember those relentless eyes too clearly to think so. What shall I do? What shall I do? I am no longer master of my own soul. At any moment, this loathsome parasite may creep into me, and then I must tell someone my hideous secret. I must tell it or go mad. If I had someone to sympathize and advise me, Wilson is out of the question. Charles Sadler would understand me only so far as his own experience carries him. Pratt Haldane, he is a well-balanced man, a man of great common sense and resource. I will go to him. I will tell him everything. God grant that he may be able to advise me. End of part 3. Damn. Good luck. My only commentary. Okay, maybe a little water. We can do this. 4. 6:45 p.m. No, it is useless. There is no human help for me. I must fight this out single-handed. 2 courses... Oh, man, I was thinking once I ended part 3, I would turn on my fan because I am getting sweaty over here. My bad. Give me a second. There you go. Yeah, I plugged it in, but I didn't actually turn it to on, so it's just sitting there. Okay. Do that little sentence again. Okay. 4. 6:45 p.m. No, it is useless. There is no human help for me. I must fight this out single-handed. 2 courses lie before me. I might become this woman's lover, or I must endure such persecutions as she can inflict upon me. Even if none came, I shall live in a well of apprehension. But she may torture me. She may drive me mad. She may kill me. I will never, never, never give in. What can she inflict which would be worse than the loss of Agatha and the knowledge that I am a perjured liar and have forfeited the name of gentleman? I respect this man. It is very hard to never give up sometimes. Pratt Haldane was most amiable and listened with all the politeness to my story. But when I looked at his heavy-set features, his slow eyes, and the ponderous study furniture which surrounded him, I could hardly tell him what I had come to say. It was all so substantial, so material. And, besides, what would I myself have said a short month ago if one of my colleagues had come to me with a story of demonic possession? Perhaps I should have been less patient than he was. As it was, he took notes of my statement, asked me how much tea I drank, how many hours I slept, whether I had been overworking much, had I had sudden pains in my head, evil dreams, singing in the ears, flashing before the eyes, all questions which pointed to his belief that brain congestion was at the bottom of my trouble. Finally, he dismissed me with a great many platitudes about open-air exercise and avoidance of nervous excitement. His prescription, which was for chloral and bromide, I rolled up and threw into the gutter. I have to say, I don't think that that's completely wrong. I mean, like, mental health can and has been proven to improve when we do the little things that keep us steady, you know? Regularly showering, eating 3 meals a day, having a bedtime, waking up around the same time every day, things like that. Just like general things that are hard to do when your mental health is out of whack. Helps keep you steady and can help pull you out of some kind of episode. So I wouldn't say this man isn't necessarily wrong, though. It would be better for him if he like ate 3 meals a day and exercised, but clearly that's not going to get him out of this. No idea why I had to stop to tell you that. I don't know. Whatever. ADD brain. Who knows? No, I can look for no help with any human being. If I consult any more, they may put their heads together, and I may find myself in an asylum. Oof. I can but grip my courage with both hands and pray that an honest man may not be abandoned. April 15th. It is the sweetest spring within the memory of man. So green, so mild, so beautiful. Ah, what a contrast between nature without and my own soul so torn with doubt and terror. It has been an uneventful day, but I know that I am on the edge of an abyss. I know it, and yet I go on with the routine of my life. The one bright spot is that Agatha is happy and well and out of all danger. If this creature had a hand on each of us, what might she not do? April 16th. The woman is ingenious in her torments. She knows how fond I am of my work and how highly my lectures are thought of. So it is from that point that she now attacks me. It will end, I can see, in my losing my professorship, but I will fight to the finish. She shall not drive me out of it without a struggle. I was not conscious of any change during my lecture this morning, save that for a minute or two I had a dizziness and swimminess which rapidly passed away. On the contrary, I congratulated myself upon having made my subject, the functions of the red corpuscles, both interesting and clear. I was surprised, therefore, when a student came into my laboratory immediately after the lecture and complained of being puzzled by the discrepancy between my statements and those in the textbooks. He showed me his notebook, in which I was reported as having, in one portion of the lecture, championed the most outrageous and unscientific heresies. Of course I denied it, and declared that he had misunderstood me, but on comparing his notes with those of his companions, it became clear that he was right, and that I really had made some most preposterous statements. Of course, I shall explain it away as being the result of a moment of aberration, but I feel only too sure that this will be the first of a series. It is but a month now to the end of the session, and I pray that I may be able to hold out until then. April 26th. 10 days have elapsed since I have had the heart to make any entry in my journal. Why should I record my own humiliation and degradation? I was vowed never to open it again. And yet the force of habit is strong, and here I find myself taking up once more the record of my own dreadful experiences, in much the same spirit in which a suicide has been known to take notes on the effects of the poison which killed him. Well, the crash which I had foreseen has come, and that no further back than yesterday. The university authorities have taken my lectureship away from me. It has been done in the most delicate way, purporting to be a temporary measure to relieve me from the effects of my overwork, and to give me the opportunity of recovering my health. Nonetheless, it has been done, and I am no longer Professor Gilroy. The laboratory is still in my charge, but I have little doubt that that also will soon go. The fact is that my lectures had become the laughingstock of the university. My class was crowded with students who came to see and hear what the eccentric professor would do or say next. I cannot go into the detail of my humiliation. Oh, what a devilish woman! There is no depth of buffoonery and imbecility to which she has not forced me. I would begin my lecture clearly and well, but always with a sense of a coming eclipse. Then, as I felt the influence, I would struggle against it, striving with clenched hands and beads of sweat upon my brow to get the better of it, while the students, hearing my incoherent words and watching my contortions, would roar with laughter at the antics of their professor. And then, when she had once fairly mastered me, out would come the most outrageous things, silly jokes, sentiments as though I were proposing a toast, snatches of ballads, personal abuse even against some member of my class, and then in a moment my brain would clear again, and my lecture would proceed decorously to the end. No wonder that my conduct has been the talk of the colleges. No wonder that the University Senate has been compelled to take official notice of such a scandal. Oh, that devilish woman. I can see him honestly ending the story by murdering her. Like, there is only so much revenge a person can take before they take it to the next step, you know, escalation and all that. Good Lord. And the most dreadful part of it all is my own loneliness. Here I sit in a commonplace English bow window, looking out upon a commonplace English street with its garish buses and its lounging policemen. Behind me there hangs a shadow which is out of all keeping with the age in the place. In the home of knowledge I am weighed down and tortured by a power of which science knows nothing. No magistrate would listen to me. No paper would discuss my case. No doctor would believe my symptoms. My own most intimate friends will only look upon it as a sign of brain derangement. I am out of all touch with my kind. Oh, that devilish woman. Let her have a care. She may push me too far. When the law cannot help a man, he may make a law for himself. She met me in the high street yesterday evening and spoke to me. It was as well for her, perhaps, that it was not between the hedges of a lonely country road. She asked me with her cold smile whether I had been chastened yet. I did not deign to answer her. "We must try another turn of the screw," said she. "Have a care, my lady, have a care. I had her at my mercy once. Perhaps another chance may come." April 28th. The suspension of my lectureship has had the effect also of taking away her means of annoying me, and so I have enjoyed 2 blessed days of peace. After all, there is no reason to despair. Sympathy pours into me from all sides, and everyone agrees that it is my devotion to science and arduous nature of my researches which have shaken my nervous system. I have had the kindest message from the council advising me to travel abroad, and expressing the confident hope that I may be able to resume all my duties by the beginning of the summer term. Nothing could be more flattering than their allusions to my career and to my services to the university. It is only in misfortune that one can test one's own popularity. This creature may weary of tormenting me, and then all may yet be well. May God grant it. April 29th. Our sleepy little town has had a small sensation. The only knowledge of crime which we ever have is when a rowdy undergraduate breaks a few lamps or comes to blows with a policeman. Last night, however, there was an attempt made to break into the branch of the Bank of England, and we are all in a flutter of conscience. Parkinson, the manager, is an intimate friend of mine, and I found him very much excited when I walked round there after breakfast. Had the thieves broken into the counting house, they would still have had the safes to reckon with, so that the defense was considerably stronger than the attack. Indeed, the latter does not appear to have ever been very formidable. 2 of the lower windows have marks as if a chisel or some such instrument had been pushed under them to force them open. The police should have a good clue, for the woodwork had been done with green paint only the day before, and from the smears it is evident that some of it has found its way onto the criminal's hands or clothes. 4:30 p.m. Ah, that accursed woman. That thrice accursed woman. Never mind, she shall not beat me. No, she shall not. Why am I struggling with that? She shall. She shall not. But the she-devil. She has taken my professorship. Now she would take my honor. Is there nothing I can do against her? Nothing save, but, hard pushed as I am, I cannot bring myself to think of that. It was about an hour ago that I went into my bedroom and was brushing my hair before the glass, when suddenly my eyes lit upon something which left me so sick and cold that I sat down upon the edge of the bed and began to cry. It is many a long year since I shed tears, but all my nerve was gone, and I could but sob in a potent grief and anger. There was my house jacket, the coat I usually wear after dinner, hanging on its peg by the wardrobe, with the right sleeve thickly crusted from wrist to elbow with daubs of green paint. So this was what she meant by another turn of the screw. She had made a public imbecile of me. Now she would brand me a criminal. This time she has failed. But how about the next? I dare not think of it, and of Agatha and my poor old mother. I wish that I were dead. Yes, this is the other turn of the screw, and this is also what she meant, no doubt, when she said that I had not realized yet the power she has over me. I look back at my account of my conversation with her, and I see how she declares that, with a slight exertion of her will, her subject would be conscious, and with a stronger one unconscious. Last night I was unconscious. I could have sworn that I slept soundly in my bed without so much as a dream, and yet those stains tell me that I dressed, made my way out, attempted to open the bank windows, and returned. Was I observed? Is it possible that someone saw me do it and followed me home? Ah, what a hell my life has become. I have no peace, no rest, and my patience is nearing its end. 10 p.m. I have cleaned my coat with turpentine. I do not think that anyone could have seen me. It was with my screwdriver that I made the marks. I found it all crusted with paint, and I have cleaned it. My head aches as if it would burst, and I have taken 5 grains of antipyrine. If it were not for Agatha, I should have taken 50 and had an end of it. May 3rd. 3 quiet days. This hell fiend is like a cat with a mouse. She lets me loose only to pounce upon me again. I am never so frightened as when everything is still. My physical state is deplorable. Perpetual hiccough and ptosis of the left eyelid. I have heard from the Mardens that they will be back the day after tomorrow. I do not know whether I am glad or sorry. They were safe in London. Once here, they may be drawn into the miserable network in which I am myself struggling, and I must tell them of it. I cannot marry Agatha so long as I know that I am not responsible for my own actions. Yes, I must tell them, even if it brings everything to an end between us. Tonight is the university ball, and I must go. God knows I never felt less in the humor for festivity, but I must not have it said that I am unfit to appear in public. If I am seen there and have speech with some of the elders of the university, it will go a long way towards showing them that it would be unjust to take my chair away from me. 11:30 p.m. I have been to the ball. Charles Sadler and I went together, but I have come away before him. I shall wait up for him, however, for, indeed, I fear to go to sleep these nights. He is a cheery, practical fellow, and a chat with him will steady my nerves. On the whole, the evening was a great success. I talked to everyone who has influence, and I think that I made them realize that my chair is not vacant quite yet. The creature was at the ball, unable to dance, of course, but sitting with Mrs. Wilson. Again and again her eyes rested upon me. They were almost the last things I saw before I left the room. Once, as I sat sideways to her, I watched her, and saw that her gaze was following someone else. It was Sadler, who was dancing at the time with the second Miss Thurston. To judge by her expression, it is well for him that he is not in her grip as I am. He does not know the escape he has had. I think I hear his step in the street now, and I will go down and let him in, if he will. Pause to drink some water. Yeah. May 4th. Why did I break it off in this way last night? I never went downstairs after all. At least, I have no recollection of doing so. But on the other hand, I cannot remember going to bed. One of my hands is greatly swollen this morning, and yet I have no remembrance of injuring it yesterday. Otherwise, I am feeling all the better for last night's festivity, but I cannot understand how it is that I did not meet Charles Sadler when I so fully intended to do so. It is possible. My God, it is only too probable. Has she been leading me some devil's dance again? I will go down to Sadler and ask him. Midday. The thing has come to a crisis. My life is not worth living, but if I am to die, then she shall come also. I will not leave her behind, to drive some other man mad as she has me. No, I have come to the limit of my endurance. She has made me as desperate and dangerous a man as walks the earth. God knows I have never had the heart to hurt a fly, and yet, if I had my hands now upon that woman, she should never leave this room alive. I shall see her this very day, and she shall learn that she has, and she shall learn what she has to expect of me. I went to Sadler and found him, to my surprise, in bed. As I entered, he sat up and turned a face toward me, which sickened me as I looked at it. Why, Sadler? What has happened? I cried, but my heart turned cold as I said it. Gilroy, he answered, mumbling with his swollen lips. I have for some weeks been under the impression that you are a madman. Now I know it, and that you are a dangerous one as well. If it were not that I am unwilling to make a scandal in the college, you would now be in the hands of the police. Do you mean, I cried, I mean that as I opened the door last night, you rushed out upon me, struck me with both your fists in the face, knocked me down, kicked me furiously in the side, and left me lying almost unconscious in the street. Look at your own hands bearing witness against you. Yes, there it was, puffed up with sponge-like knuckles, as after some terrific blow. What could I do? Though he put me down as a madman, I must tell him all. I sat by his bed and went over all my troubles from the beginning. I poured them out with quivering hands and burning words, which might have carried conviction to the most skeptical. She hates you and she hates me, I cried. She revenged herself last night on both of us at once. She saw me leave the ball, and she must have seen you also. She knew how long it would take you to reach home, then she had but to use her wicked wail. Ah, your bruised face is a small thing beside my bruised soul. He was struck by my story. That was evident. Yes, yes, she watched me out of the room, he muttered. She is capable of it, but is it possible that she has really reduced you to this? What do you intend to do? To stop it, I cried. I am perfectly desperate. I shall give her fair warning today, and the next time will be the last. Do nothing rash, said he. Rash, I cried. The only rash thing is that I should postpone it another hour. With that, I rushed to my room, and here I am on the eve of what may be the great crisis of my life. I shall start at once. I have gained one thing today, for I have made one man, at least, realize the truth of this monstrous experience of mind. And if the worst should happen, this diary remains as a proof of the goad that has driven me. Evening. When I came to Wilson's, I was shown up and found that he was sitting with Miss Penelosa. For half an hour, I had to endure his fussy talk about his recent research into the exact nature of the spiritualistic rap, while the creature and I sat in silence, looking across the room at each other. I read a sinister amusement in her eyes, and she must have seen hatred and menace in mine. Not mind. Why did I do that twice? I had almost despaired of having speech with her when he was called from the room, and we were left free for a few moments together. God, this story just keeps... Oh, no. Okay. It's almost over. I fully flipped the page, expecting to be like 6 more. It just keeps going. Well, Professor Gilroy, or is it Mr. Gilroy, said she, with that bitter smile of hers. How is your friend, Mr. Charles Sadler, after the ball? You fiend, I cried. You have come to the end of your tricks now. I will have no more of them. Listen to what I say. I strode across and shook her roughly by the shoulder. As sure as there is a God in heaven, I swear that if you try another of your devilries upon me, I will have your life for it. Come what may, I will have your life. I have come to the end of what a man can endure. Accounts are not quite settled between us, said she, with a passion that equaled my own. I can love, and I can hate. You had your choice. You chose to spurn the first. Now you must test the other. It will take a little more to break your spirit, I see, but broken it shall be. Ms. Marden comes back tomorrow, as I understand. What has that to do with you, I cried. It is a pollution that you should dare even think of her. If I thought that she would harm her... She was frightened, I could see, though she tried to brazen it out. She read the black thoughts in my mind and cowered away from me. She is fortunate in having such a champion, said she. He actually dares to threaten a lonely woman. I must really congratulate Miss Marden upon her protector. The words were bitter, but the voice and manner were more acid still. There is no use talking, said I. I only came here to tell you most solemnly, that your next outrage upon me will be your last. With that, as I heard Wilson's step upon the stair, I walked from the room. She may look venomous and deadly, but, for all that, she is beginning to see now that she has as much to fear from me as I can have from her. Murder. It has an ugly sound. But you don't talk of murdering a snake or murdering a tiger. Let her have a care now. May 5th. I met Agatha and her mother at the station at 11 o'clock. She is looking so bright, so happy, so beautiful, and she was so overjoyed to see me. What have I done to deserve such love? I went back home with them, and we lunched together. All the troubles seem in a moment to have been shredded back from my life. She tells me that I am looking pale and worried and ill. The dear child puts it down to my loneliness and the perfunctory attention of a housekeeper. I pray that she may never know the truth. May the shadow, if shadow there must be, lie ever black across my life and leave hers in the sunshine. I have just come back from them, feeling a new man. With her by my side, I think that I could show a bold face to anything which life might send. 5 p.m. Now let me try to be accurate. Let me try to say exactly how it occurred. It is fresh in my mind, and I can set it down correctly, though it is not likely that the time will ever come when I shall forget the doings of today. Can you hear that car? I had returned from the Mardens after lunch, and it was cutting some microscopic sections in my freezing microtome when in an instant I lost consciousness in the sudden hateful fashion which has become only too familiar of me of late. When my senses came back to me, I was sitting in a small chamber, very different from the one in which I had been working. It was cozy and bright, with chintz-covered settees, colored hangings, and 1,000 pretty little trifles upon the wall. A small ornamental clock ticked in front of me, and the hands pointed to 3:30. It was all quite familiar to me, and yet I stared about for a moment in a half-dazed way until my eyes fell upon a cabinet photograph of myself upon the top of the piano. On the other side stood one of Mrs. Marden. Then, of course, I remembered where I was. It was Agatha's boudoir. But how came I there, and what did I want? A horrible sinking came to my heart. Had I been sent there on some devilish errand? Had that errand already been done? Surely it must. Otherwise, why should I be allowed to come back to consciousness? Oh, the agony of that moment. What had I done? I sprang to my feet in my despair, and as I did so, a small glass bottle fell from my knees onto the carpet. It was unbroken, and I picked it up. Outside was written, sulfuric acid, fort. When I drew the round glass stopper, a thick fume rose slowly up, and a pungent, choking smell pervaded the room. I recognized it as one which I kept for chemical testing in my chambers. But why had I brought a bottle of vitriol into Agatha's chamber? Was it not this thick, reeking liquid with which jealous women had been known to mar the beauty of their rivals? My heart stood still as I held the body to the light. Thank God I was full. Did I say body? The bottle. Hi, Medusa. Body. Is that why you're here? Is that why you're here? Please go away, though. I don't want you knocking anything over. We have a delicate balance. Thank you. Come here. Well, please stay down there. We're almost done with this story. Thank God it was full. No mischief had been done as yet. But had Agatha come in a minute sooner, was it not certain that the hellish parasite within me would have dashed the stuff into her? Ah, it will not bear to be thought of. But it must have been for that. Why else should I have brought it? At the thought of what I might have done, my worn nerves broke down, and I sat shivering and twitching, the pitiable wreck of a man. It was the sound of Agatha's voice and the rustle of her dress which restored me. I looked up and saw her blue eyes, so full of tenderness and pity, gazing down at me. We must take you away to the country, Austin, she said. You won't rest in quiet. You look wretchedly ill. Oh, it is nothing, said I, trying to smile. It was only a temporary weakness. I am all right again now. I am so sorry to keep you waiting. Poor boy, you must have been here quite half an hour. The vicar was in the drawing room, and as I knew that you did not care for him, I thought it better that Jane should show you up here. I thought the man would never go. Thank God he stayed. Thank God he stayed, I cried hysterically. Why, what is the matter with you, Austin? She asked, holding my arm as I staggered up from the chair. Why are you glad that the vicar stayed? And what is this little bottle in your hand? Nothing, I cried, thrusting it into my pocket. But I must go. I have something important to do. How stern you look, Austin. I have never seen your face like that. You are angry? Yes, I am angry. But not with me. No, my darling. You would not understand. But you have not told me why you came. I came to ask whether you would always love me, no matter what I did, or what shadow might fall on my name. Would you believe in me and trust me, however black appearances might be against me? You know that I would, Austin. Yes, I know that you would. What I do, I shall do for you. I am driven to it. There is no other way out, my darling. I kissed her and rushed from the room. The time for indecision was at an end. As long as the creature threatened my own prospects and my honor, there might be a question as to what I should do. But now, when Agatha, my innocent Agatha, was endangered, my duty lay before me like a turnpike road. I had no weapon, but I never paused for that. What weapon should I need? When I felt every muscle quivering with the strength of a frenzied man, I ran through the streets, so set upon what I had to do that I was only dimly conscious also that Professor Wilson met me, running with equal precipitance in the opposite direction. Breathless but resolute, I reached the house and rang the bell. A white-cheeked maid opened the door and turned whither yet when she saw the face that looked in at her. "Show me up at once to Miss Penelosa," I demanded. "Sir," she gasped, "Miss Penelosa died this afternoon at 3:30. Huh. Interesting. So Professor Wilson killed her. That was Parasite by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle of Sherlock fame. That was a good story. I was very concerned for him and his health and his life. He seemed like a good man, and it was very cute that he was so in love with his fiancée that he would do anything for her, including potential murder. I'm glad that she can't hurt anybody anymore. What she was doing was awful. You're staring at me. Stop staring at me. Okay. Moving on to the next story, which is Good Lady Ducayne by Mary E. Braddon. Mary Elizabeth Braddon is now recognized as the liveliest and most productive of all the 19th century sensation novelists. After the tremendous success of Lady Adelaide's Secret in 1962, came Aurora Floyd, Eleanor's Victory, Sir Jasper's Tenant, and nearly 70 other popular novels. She was a close friend of Bram and Florence Stoker for many years. When she wrote to Stoker on the 23rd of June 1897, congratulating him on Dracula, she added, "We will talk of it more anon. When I have soberly read and meditated thereupon, I have done my humdrum little story of transfusion and the Good Lady Ducayne, but your bloofer lady, Miss Braddon's Good Lady Ducayne, appeared in the Strand magazine for February 1896, finally illustrated by Gordon Brown, son of Fizz. It was not reprinted in any of her subsequent books." God, it's like everybody just knows each other and was friends. How fun. You ever notice? I think it's much more prominent in the YA space, but that tends to happen. Everybody's just kind of friends on Twitter and talks to each other. Do they still do that? Twitter isn't really a thing anymore, right? I have no idea. I spend my free time reading books about vampires, where the stories are primarily from the 1800s. I don't know what they're doing on Twitter. Okay. Oh, this seems to be in parts too. I may only be able to get through this one before the end. Yeah, it's about 26 pages. Let's see. We have time for it. 1. Bella Rolleston had made up her mind that her only chance of earning her bread and helping her mother to an occasional crust was by going out into the great unknown world as companion to a lady. She was willing to go to any lady rich enough to pay her a salary, and so eccentric as to wish for a hired companion. 5 shillings told off reluctantly from one of those sovereigns which were so rare with the mother and daughter, and which melted away so quickly. 5 solid shillings had been handed to a smartly dressed lady in an office in Harbeck Street, W., in the hope that this very superior person would find a situation and a salary for Miss Rolleston. That superior person glanced at the 2 half-crowns as they lay on the table where Bella's hand had placed them, to make sure they were neither of them florins, before she wrote a description of Bella's qualifications and requirements in a formidable-looking ledger. Age, she asked curtly. 18 last July. Any accomplishments? No, I am not at all accomplished. If I were, I should want to be a governess. A companion seems the lowest stage. We have some highly accomplished ladies on our books as companions, or chaperone companions. Oh, I know, babbled Bella, loquacious in her youthful candor. But that is quite a different thing. Mother hasn't been able to afford a piano since I was 12 years old, so I'm afraid I've forgotten how to play, and I have had to help Mother with her needlework, so there hasn't been much time to study. Please don't waste time upon explaining what you can't do, but kindly tell me anything you can do, said the superior person, crushingly, with her pen poised between delicate fingers, waiting to write. Can you read aloud for 2 or 3 hours at a stretch? Are you active and handy, an early riser, a good walker, sweet-tempered and obliging? I can say yes to all those questions except about the sweetness. I think I have a pretty good temper, and I should be anxious to oblige anybody who paid for my services. I should want them to feel that I am really earning my salary. The kind of ladies who come to me would not care for a talkative companion, said the person severely, having finished writing in her book. My connection lies chiefly among the aristocracy, and in that class considerable deference is expected. Oh, of course, said Bella, but it is quite different when I'm talking to you. I want to tell you all about myself once and forever. I am glad it is only to be once, said the person, with the edges of her lips. The person was of uncertain age, tightly laced in a black silk gown. She had a powdery complexion and a handsome clump of somebody else's hair on the top of her head. It may be that Bella's girlish freshness and vivacity had an irritating effect upon nerves weakened by an 8-hours day and an overheated second floor in Harbeek Street. To Bella, the official apartment, with its Brussels carpet, velvet curtains and velvet chairs, and French clock, ticking loud on the marble chimney piece, suggested the luxury of a palace, as compared with another second floor in Walworth, where Mrs. Rolleston and her daughters had managed to exist for the last 6 years. I have a whiny little... What do you want? Come here. Oh, you're being whiny. I don't know why. You have plenty of food. You're not eating for a long time. They get fed at 10 and it's only 7:30, but she just cries and cries for her food hours ahead. And I don't know why. There's still dry food in there. Take a nap. Be a cat and sleep in the sunlight. There's still some out there, I think. Come on. Oh, take a nap. Right. Do you think you have anything on your books that would suit me? Faltered Bella after a pause. Oh dear, no. I have nothing in view at present, answered the person, who had swept Bella's half-crowns into a drawer absent-mindedly with the tips of her fingers. You see, you are so very unformed, so much too young to be companion to a lady of position. It is a pity you have not enough education for a nursery governess. That would be more in your line. And do you think it will be very long before you can get me a situation? Asked Bella doubtfully. I really cannot say. Have you any particular reason for being so impatient? Not a love affair, I hope. A love affair, cried Bella with flaming cheeks. What other nonsense. I want a situation because another mother is poor, and I hate being a burden to her. I want a salary that I can share with her. There won't be much margin for sharing in the salary you are likely to get at your age, and with your very unformed manners, said the person, who found Bella's peony cheeks, bright eyes, and unbridled vivacity more and more oppressive. There's a picture here. Okay. Perhaps if you'd be kind enough to give me back the fee, I would take it to an agency where the connection isn't quite so aristocratic, said Bella, who, as she told her mother, and her recital of the interview was determined not to be sat upon. "You will find no agency that can do more for you than mine," replied the person, whose harpy fingers never relinquished coin. "You will have to wait for your opportunity. Yours is an exceptional case, but I will bear you in mind, and if anything suitable offers, I will write to you. I cannot say more than that." The half-contemptuous bend of the stately head, weighted with borrowed hair, indicated the end of the interview. Bella went back to Walworth, tramped sturdily every inch of the way in the September afternoon, and took off the superior person for the amusement of her mother and the landlady, who lingered in the shabby little sitting room after bringing in the tea tray, to applaud Miss Rolleston's taking off. "Dear, dear, what a mimic she is," said the landlady. "You ought to have let her go on the stage, mum. She might have made her fortune as an actress." 2. Bella waited and hoped, and listened for the postman's knocks, which brought such store of letters for the parlors in the first floor, and so few for that humble second floor, where mother and daughter sat sewing with hand and with wheel and treadle for the greater part of the day. Mrs. Rolleston was a lady by birth and education, but it had been her bad fortune to marry a scoundrel, and for the last half-dozen years she had been that worst of widows, a wife whose husband had deserted her. Happily, she was courageous, industrious, and a clever needlewoman, and she had been able just to earn a living for herself and her only child by making mantles and cloaks for a West End house. It was not a luxurious living. Cheap lodgings in a shabby street off the Walworth Road, scanty dinners, homely food, well-worn raiment, had been the portion of mother and daughter. But they loved each other so dearly, and nature had made them both so light-hearted that they had contrived somehow to be happy. That's adorable and sad. I needed my snack. But now this idea of going out into the world as companion to some fine lady had rooted itself into Bella's mind. And although she idolized her mother, and although the parting of mother and daughter must needs tear two loving hearts into shreds, the girl longed for enterprise and change and excitement, as the pages of old longed to be knights, and to start for the Holy Land to break a lance with the infidel. She grew tired of racing downstairs every time the postman knocked, only to be told, "Nothing for you, miss," by the smudgy-faced drudge who picked up the letters from the passage floor. "Nothing for you, miss," grinned the lodging-house drudge, till at last Bella took heart of grace and walked up to Harbeck Street and asked the superior person how it was that no situation had been found for her. "You are too young," said the person, "and you want a salary." "Of course I do," answered Bella. "Don't other people want salaries? Young ladies of your age generally want a comfortable home." "I don't," snapped Bella. "I want to help mother." "You can call again this day week," said the person, "or if I hear of anything in the meantime, I will write to you." No letter came from the person, and in exactly a week Bella put on her neatest hat, the one that had been seldomest caught in the rain, and trudged off to Harbeck Street. It was a dull October afternoon, and there was a grayness in the air which might turn to fog before night. The Walworth Road shops gleamed brightly through the gray atmosphere, and though to a young lady reared in Mayfair or Belgravia, such shop windows would have been unworthy of a glance, they were a snare and temptation for Bella. There were so many things that she longed for and would never be able to buy. Harbeck Street is apt to be empty at this dead season of the year. A long, long street, an endless perspective of eminently respectable houses. The person's office was at the further end, and Bella looked down that long, gray vista almost despairingly, more tired than usual with the trudge from Walworth. As she looked, a carriage passed her, an old-fashioned yellow chariot on sea springs, drawn by a pair of high gray horses, with the stateliest of coachmen driving them, and a tall footman sitting by his side. It looks like the fairy godmother's coach, thought Bella. I shouldn't wonder if it began by being a pumpkin. It was a surprise when she reached the person's door to find the yellow chariot standing before it, and the tall footman waiting near the doorstep. She was almost afraid to go in and meet the owner of that splendid carriage. She had caught only a glimpse of its occupant as the chariot rolled by, a plumed bonnet, a patch of ermine. The person's smart page ushered her upstairs and knocked at the official door. Miss Rolleston, he announced apologetically, while Bella waited outside. Show her in, said the person quickly, and then Bella heard her murmuring something in a low voice to her client. Bella went in fresh, blooming, a living image of youth and hope, and before she looked at the person, her gaze was riveted by the owner of the chariot. Never had she seen anyone as old as the old lady sitting by the person's fire. A little old figure, wrapped from chin to feet in an ermine mantle, a withered old face under a plumed bonnet, a face so wasted by age that it seemed only a pair of eyes and a peaked chin. The nose was peaked too, but between the sharply pointed chin and the great shining eyes, the small, aquiline nose was hardly visible. This is Ms. Rolleston, Lady Ducayne. Claw-like fingers, flashing like jewels, lifted a double eyeglass to Lady Ducayne's shining black eyes, and through the glasses Bella saw those unnaturally bright eyes magnified to a gigantic size, and glaring at her awfully. Miss Torpinter has told me all about you, said the old voice that belonged to the eyes. Have you good health? Are you strong and active, able to eat well, sleep well, walk well, able to enjoy all there is good in life? I have never known what it is to be ill or idle, answered Bella. Then I think you will do for me. Of course, in the event of references being perfectly satisfactory, put in the person. I don't want references. The young woman looks frank and innocent. I'll take her on trust. So like you, dear Lady Ducayne, murmured Miss Torpinter. I want a strong young woman whose health will give me no trouble. You have been so unfortunate in that respect, cooed the person, whose voice and manner were subdued to a melting sweetness by the old woman's presence. Yes, I've been rather unlucky, grunted Lady Ducayne. There's also a little picture of her. It's old lady crouching. I wonder how old she actually is. Is she like 60 or is she like 90? But I am sure Miss Rolleston will not disappoint you, though certainly after your unpleasant experience with Miss Thompson, who looked the picture of health, and Miss Blandley, who said she had never seen a doctor since she was vaccinated. Lies, no doubt, muttered Lady Ducayne, and then, turning to Bella, she asked curtly, You don't mind spending the winter in Italy, I suppose? In Italy? The very word was magical. Bella's fair young face flushed crimson. It has been the dream of my life to see Italy, she gasped. From Walworth to Italy? How far, how impossible such a journey had seemed to that romantic dreamer. Well, your dream will be realized. Get yourself ready to leave Charing Cross by the train deluxe this day week at 11. Be sure you are at the station a quarter before the hour. My people will look after you and your luggage. Lady Ducayne rose from her chair, assisted by her crutch stick, and Miss Torpinter escorted her to the door. And with regard to salary? Questioned the person on the way. Salary, oh, the same as usual. And if the young woman wants a quarter's pay in advance, you can write to me for a check, Lady Ducayne answered, carelessly. Miss Torpinter went all the way downstairs with her client and waited to see her seated in the yellow chariot. When she came upstairs again, she was slightly out of breath, and she had resumed that superior manner which Bella had found so crushing. You may think yourself uncommonly lucky, Miss Rolleston, said she. I have dozens of young ladies on my books whom I might have recommended for this situation, but I remembered having told you to call this afternoon, and I thought I would give you a chance. Old Lady Ducayne is one of the best people on my books. She gives her companion 100 a year and pays all traveling expenses. You will live in the lap of luxury. 100 a year? How too lovely. Shall I have to dress very grandly? Does Lady Ducayne keep much company? At her age? No, she lives in seclusion, in her own apartments. Her French maid, her footman, her medical attendant, her courier. Why did those other companions leave her? Asked Bella. Their health broke down. Poor things. And so they had to leave? Yes, they had to leave. I suppose you would like a quarter's salary in advance? Oh, yes, please. I shall have things to buy. Very well. I will write for Lady Ducayne's check, and I will send you the balance, after deducting my commission for the year. To be sure, I had forgotten the commission. You don't suppose I keep this office for pleasure? Of course not, murmured Bella, remembering the 5 shillings entrance fee, but nobody could expect 100 a year and a winter in Italy for 5 shillings. 3. Pause to drink and eat a grape. Okay. From Miss Rolliston at Cap Farino to Mrs. Rolliston in Beresford Street, Walworth. How I wish you could see this place, dearest. The blue sky, the olive woods, the orange and lemon orchards. Sorry, I have trouble with that word. I always want to say like orchids or something, but it's orchards. Anyway, between the cliffs and the sea, sheltering in the hollow of the great hills, and with summer waves dancing up to the narrow ridge of pebbles and weeds, which is the Italian idea of a beach. Oh, how I wish you could see it all, mother dear, and bask in the sunshine that makes it so difficult to believe the date at the head of this paper. November! The air is like an English June. The air is so hot that I can't walk a few yards without an umbrella. And to think of you at Walworth while I am here. I could cry at the thought that perhaps you will never see this lovely coast, this wonderful sea, these summer flowers that bloom in winter. There is a hedge of pink geraniums under my window, mother, a thick, rank hedge, as if the flowers grew wild. And there are Dijon roses, climbing over arches and palisades all along the terrace. Palisades. A rose garden full of bloom in November. Just picture it all. You can never imagine the luxury of this hotel. It is nearly new and has been built and decorated regardless of expense. Our rooms are upholstered in pale blue satin, which shows up Lady Ducayne's parchment complexion, but as she sits all day in a corner of the balcony basking in the sun, except when she is in her carriage, and all the evening in her armchair close to the fire, and never sees anyone but her own people, her complexion matters very little. She has the handsomest suite of rooms in the hotel. My bedroom is inside hers, the sweetest room. All the blue satin and white lace, white enameled furniture, looking glasses on every wall, till I know my pert little profile as I never knew it before. The room was really meant for Lady Ducayne's dressing room, but she ordered one of the blue satin couches to be arranged as a bed for me, the prettiest little bed, which I can wheel near the window on sunny mornings, as it is on casters and easily moved about. I feel as if Lady Ducayne were a funny old grandmother who had suddenly appeared in my life, very, very rich and very, very kind. She is not at all exacting. I read aloud to her a great deal, and she dozes and nods while I read. Sometimes I hear her moaning in her sleep, as if she had troublesome dreams. When she is tired of my reading, she orders Francine, her maid, to read a French novel to her, and I hear her chuckle and groan now and then, as if she were more interested in those books than in Dickens or Scott. My French is not good enough to follow Francine, who reads very quickly. I have a great deal of liberty, for Lady Ducayne often tells me to run away and amuse myself. I roam about the hills for hours. Everything is so lovely. I lose myself in olive woods, always climbing up and up towards the pine woods above. and above the pines there are the snow mountains that just show their white peaks above the dark hills. Oh, you poor dear, how can I ever make you understand what this place is like? You whose poor, tired eyes have only the opposite side of Beresford Street. Sometimes I go no farther than the terrace in front of the hotel, which is a favorite lounging place with everybody. The gardens lie below, and the tennis courts where I sometimes play with a very nice girl, the only person in the hotel with whom I have made friends. She is a year older than I, and has come to Katherine with her brother, a doctor, or a medical student who is going to be a doctor. He passed his MB exam in Edinburgh just before they left home, Lotta told me. He came to Italy entirely on his sister's account. She had a troublesome chest attack last summer and was ordered to winter abroad. They are orphans, quite alone in the world, and so fond of each other. It is very nice for me to have such a friend in Lotta. She is so thoroughly respectable. I can't help using that word, for some of the girls in this hotel go on in a way that I know you would shudder at. Lotta was brought up by her aunt, deep down in the country, and knows hardly anything about life. Her brother won't allow her to read a novel, French or English, that he has not read and approved. God, I remember that bugging me the first time I read this story. God, imagine that. Just like you're not allowed to read anything except that a man has already approved for you. He treats me like a child, she told me. But I don't mind. For it's nice to know somebody loves me and cares about what I do. And even about my thoughts. Okay. Sure. Perhaps this is what makes some girls so eager to marry. The want of someone strong and brave and honest and true to care for them and order them about. I want no one, mother darling, for I have you, and you are all the world to me. No husband could ever come between us two. If I ever were to marry, he would have only the second place in my heart. But I don't suppose I shall ever marry, or even know what it is like to have an offer of marriage. No young man can afford to marry a penniless girl nowadays. Life is too expensive. Truly. Mr. Stafford, Lotta's brother, is very clever and very kind. He thinks it is rather hard for me to have to live with such an old woman as Lady Ducayne, but then he does not know how poor we are, you and I, and what a wonderful life this seems to me in this lovely place. I feel a selfish wretch for enjoying all my luxuries, while you, who want them so much more than I, have none of them, hardly know what they are like, do you, dearest? For my scamp of a father began to go to the dogs soon after you were married, and since then life has been all trouble and care and struggle for you. By the way, I nearly forgot. There's a picture in the olive woods, a sketch of her in the woods in Italy. Okay, this letter was written when Bella had been less than a month at Cap Farino, before the novelty had worn off the landscape, and before the pleasure of luxurious surroundings had begun to cloy. She wrote to her mother every week, such long letters as girls who have lived in closest companion with a mother alone can write. Letters that are like a diary of heart and mind. She wrote gaily always, but when the new year began, Mrs. Rolleston thought she detected a note of melancholy under all those lively details about the place and the people. My poor girl is getting homesick, she thought. Her heart is in Beresford Street. Beresford. God, why am I... Beresford. Remember, it's Beresford. It might be that she missed her new friend and companion, Lotta Strafford, who had gone with her brother for a little tour to Genoa and Spezia and as far as Pisa. They were to return before February, but in the meantime, Bella might naturally feel very solitary among all those strangers whose manners and doings she described so well. The mother's instinct had been true. Bella was not so happy as she had been in that first flush of wonder and delight, which followed the change from Walworth to the Riviera. Somehow, she knew not how, lassitude had crept upon her. She no longer loved to climb the hills, no longer flourished her orange stick in sheer gladness of heart as her light feet skipped over the rough ground and the coarse grass on the mountainside. The odor of rosemary and thyme, the fresh breath of the sea, no longer filled her with rapture. She thought of Beresford Street and her mother's face with a sick longing. They were so far away. And then she thought of Lady Ducayne, sitting by the heaped-up olive logs in the overheated salon, thought of that wizened nutcracker profile and those gleaming eyes with an invincible horror. Visitors at the hotel had told her that the air of Cap Farino was relaxing, better suited to age than to youth, to sickness than to health. No doubt it was so. She was not so well as she had been at Walworth, but she told herself that she was suffering only from the pain of separation from the dear companion of her girlhood, the mother who had been nurse, sister, friend, flatterer, all things in this world to her. She had shed many tears over that parting, had spent many a melancholy hour on the marble terrace with yearning eyes looking westward, and with her heart's desire 1,000 miles away. She was sitting in her favorite spot, an angle at the eastern end of the terrace, a quiet little nook sheltered by orange trees, when she heard a couple of Riviera habitués talking in the garden below. They were sitting on a bench against the terrace wall. She had no idea of listening to their talk, till the sound of Lady Ducayne's name attracted her, and then she listened without any thought of wrongdoing. They were talking no secrets, just casually discussing a hotel acquaintance. They were two elderly people whom Bella only knew by sight, an English clergyman who had wintered abroad for half his lifetime, a stout, comfortable, well-to-do spinster whose chronic bronchitis obliged her to migrate annually. "I have met her about Italy for the last 10 years," said the lady, "but have never found out her real age." "I put her down at 100, not a year less," replied the parson. "Her reminiscences all go back to the Regency. She was evidently then in her zenith, and I have heard her say things that showed she was in Parisian society when the First Empire was at its best, before Josephine was divorced. She doesn't talk much now. No, there's not much life left in her. She is wise in keeping herself secluded. I only wonder that wicked old quack, her Italian doctor, didn't finish her off years ago. I should think it must be the other way, and that he keeps her alive. My dear Miss Manders, do you think foreign quackery ever kept anybody alive? Well, there she is, and she never goes anywhere without him. He certainly has an unpleasant countenance." "Unpleasant," echoed the parson. "I don't believe the foul fiend himself can beat him in ugliness. A pity that poor young woman who has to live between old Lady Ducayne and Dr. Paravicini. Dr. Paravicini. We can repeat that. But the old lady is very good to her companions. No doubt. She is very free with her cash. The servants call her good Lady Ducayne. She's a withered old female Croesus, and knows she'll never be able to get through her money, and doesn't relish the idea of other people enjoying it when she's in her coffin. People who live to be as old as she is become slavishly attached to life. I dare say she's generous to those poor girls, but she can't make them happy. They die in her service. Don't, brain break. Drinking some water. Don't say they, Mr. Carton. I know that one poor girl died in Mentone last spring. Yes, and another poor girl died in Rome 3 years ago. I was there at the time. Good Lady Ducayne left her there in an English family. The girl had every comfort. The old woman was very liberal to her, but she died. I tell you, Miss Manders, it is not good for any young woman to live with two such horrors as Lady Ducayne and Paravicini. They talked of other things, but Bella hardly heard them. She sat motionless, and a cold wind seemed to come down upon her from the mountains and to creep up to her from the sea, till she shivered as she sat there in the sunshine, in the shelter of the orange trees, in the midst of all that beauty and brightness. Here's a picture, with yearning eyes looking westward, of our young girl. Ooh. Nope. I'm probably not holding those up for long enough. Sorry. Oh, right, okay. Yes, they were uncanny, certainly, the pair of them. She so like an aristocratic witch in her withered old age, he of no particular age, with a face that was more like a waxen mask than any human countenance Bella had ever seen. What did it matter? Old age is venerable and worthy of all reverence, and Lady Ducayne had been very kind to her. Dr. Paravicini was a harmless, inoffensive student who seldom looked up from the book he was reading. He had his private sitting room where he made experiments in chemistry and natural science, perhaps in alchemy. What could it matter to Bella? He had always been polite to her in his far-off way. She could not be more happily placed than she was in this palatial hotel with this rich old lady. No doubt she missed the young English girl who had been so friendly, and it might be that she missed the girl's brother, for Mr. Strafford had talked to her a good deal, had interested himself in the book she was reading, and her manner of amusing herself when she was not on duty. You must come to our little salon when you are off, as the hospital nurses call it, and we can have some music. No doubt you play and sing? Upon which Bella had to own, with a blush of shame, that she had forgotten how to play the piano ages ago. Mother and I used to sing duets sometimes between the lights, without accompaniment, she said, and the tears came into her eyes as she thought of the humble room, the half-hour's respite from work, the sewing machine standing where a piano ought to have been, and her mother's plaintive voice, so sweet, so true, so dear. Sometimes she found herself wondering whether she would ever see that beloved mother again. Strange forebodings came into her mind. She was angry with herself for giving way to melancholy thoughts. One day she questioned Lady Ducayne's French maid about those two companions who had died within 3 years. They were poor, feeble creatures, Francine told her. They looked fresh and bright enough when they came to Milady, but they ate too much and they were lazy. They died of luxury and idleness. Milady was too kind to them. They had nothing to do, and so they took to fancying things, fancying the air didn't suit them, that they couldn't sleep. I sleep well enough, but I have had a strange dream several times since I have been in Italy. Ah, you had better not begin to think about dreams, or you will be like those other girls. They were dreamers, and they dreamt themselves into the cemetery. The dream troubled her a little, not because it was a ghastly or frightening dream, but on account of sensations which she had never felt before in sleep. A whirring of wheels that went round in her brain, a great noise like a whirlwind, but rhythmical like the ticking of a gigantic clock. And in the midst of this uproar, as of winds and waves, she seemed to sink into a gulf of unconsciousness, out of sleep into far deeper sleep, total extinction. And then, after that blank interval, there had come the sound of voices, and then again the whir of wheels, louder and louder, and again the blank, and then she knew no more till morning, when she awoke, feeling languid and oppressed. She told Dr. Paravicini of her dream one day, on the only occasion when she wanted his professional advice. She had suffered rather severely from the mosquitoes before Christmas, and had been almost frightened at finding a wound upon her arm which she could only attribute to the venomous sting of one of those torturers. Paravicini put on his glasses and scrutinized the angry mark on the round white arm as Bella stood before him and Lady Ducayne with her sleeve rolled up above her elbow. Yes, that's rather more than a joke, he said. He has caught you on the top of a vein. What a vampire! But there's no harm done, Signora. Nothing like a little dressing of mine won't heal. You must always show me any bite of this nature. It might be dangerous if neglected. These creatures feed on poison and disseminate it. And to think that such tiny creatures can bite like this, said Bella. My arm looks as if it has been cut by a knife. If I were to show you a mosquito sting under my microscope, you wouldn't be surprised at that, replied Paravicini. Bella had to put up with the mosquito bites, even when they came on the top of a vein, and produced that ugly wound. The wound reoccurred now and then at longish intervals, and Bella found Dr. Paravicini's dressing a speedy cure. If he were the quack his enemies called him, he had at least a light hand and a delicate touch in performing this small operation. And here's another picture. What a vampire! And it's him looking at her, quote-unquote, mosquito bites. There, I held it up for longer. Maybe that was helpful. I think, maybe? I don't know, yeah. Bella Rolliston to Mrs. Rolliston, April 14th. Ever dearest, behold the check for my second quarter salary, 25 pounds. There is no one to pinch off a whole tenner for a year's commissions as there was last time, so it is all for you, mother dear. I have plenty of pocket money in hand from the cash I brought away with me when you insisted on my keeping more than I wanted. It isn't possible to spend money here, except on occasional tips to servants or sous to beggars and children. Unless one had lots to spend, for everything one would like to buy, tortoise shell, coral, lace, is so ridiculously dear that only a millionaire ought to look at it. Italy is a dream of beauty, but for shopping, give me Newington Causeway. You ask me so earnestly if I am quite well that I fear my letters must have been very dull lately. Yes, dear, I am well, but I am not quite so strong as I was when I used to trudge to the West End to buy half a pound of tea, just for a constitutional walk, or to Dulwich to look at the pictures. Italy is relaxing, and I feel what the people here call slack. But I fancy I can see your dear face looking worried as you read this. Indeed, I am not ill. I am only a little tired of this lovely scene, as I suppose one must get tired of looking at one of Turner's pictures if it hung on a wall that was always opposite one. I think of you every hour and every day. Think of you in our homely little room, our dear little shabby parlor, with the armchairs from the wreck of your old home, and Dick singing in his cage over the sewing machine. Dear, shrill, maddening Dick, who, we flattered ourselves, was so passionately fond of us. Do tell me in your next that he is well. My dear friend Lotta and her brother never came back after all. They went from Pisa to Rome. Happy mortals, and they are to be on the Italian lakes in May, which lake was not decided when Lotta last wrote to me. She has been a charming correspondent, and has confided with all her little flirtations to me. We are all to go to Bellagio next week, by Genoa and Milan. Isn't that lovely? Lady Ducayne travels by the easiest stages, except when she is bottled up in the train de luxe. We shall stop 2 days at Genoa and once at Milan. What a bore I shall be to you with my talk about Italy when I come home. Love, and ever more love from your adoring Bella. End of 3. On to 4. How many is there, actually? Oh, this is the last part. Okay, cool. Herbert Shefford. No. God. Immediately messed up. Herbert Stafford and his sister had often talked of the pretty English girl with her fresh complexion, which made such a pleasant touch of rosy color among all those sallow faces at the Grand Hotel. The young doctor thought of her with a compassionate tenderness. Her utter loneliness in that great hotel where there were so many people, her bondage to that old woman where everyone else was free to think of nothing but enjoying life. It was a hard fate, and the poor child was evidently devoted to her mother, and felt the pain of separation. Only 2 of them, and very poor, and all the world to each other, he thought. Lotta told him one morning that they were to meet again at Bellagio. The old thing and her court are to be there before we are, she said. I shall be charmed to have Bella again. She is so bright and gay, in spite of an occasional touch of homesickness. I never took to a girl on a short acquaintance as I did to her. I mean, Bella has 2 hands. I like her best when she is homesick, said Herbert, for then I am sure she has a heart. Weird sentence. What have you to do with hearts except for dissection? Don't forget that Bella is an absolute pauper. She told me in confidence that her mother makes mantles for a West End shop. You can hardly have a lower depth than that. I shouldn't think any less of her if her mother made matchboxes. Not in the abstract. Of course not. Matchboxes are honest labor. But you couldn't marry a girl whose mother makes mantles. We haven't come to the consideration of that question yet, answered Herbert, who liked to provoke his sister. In 2 years' hospital practice, he had seen too much of the grim realities of life to retain any prejudices about rank. Cancer, phthisis, gangrene. Leave a man with little respect for the outward differences which vary the husk of humanity. The kernel is always the same, fearfully and wonderfully made, a subject for pity and terror. Mr. Stratford and his sister arrived at Bellagio in a fair May evening. The sun was going down at the steamer as the steamer approached the pier, and all that glory of purple bloom which curtains every wall at this season of the year flushed and deepened in the glowing light. A group of ladies were standing on the pier watching the arrivals, and among them Herbert saw a pale face that startled him out of his wonted composure. There she is, murmured Lotta at his elbow, but how dreadfully changed. She looks a wreck. They were shaking hands with her a few minutes later, and a flush had lighted upon her poor pinched face in the pleasure of meeting. I thought you might come this evening, she said. We have been here a week. She did not add that she had been there every evening to watch the boat in, and a good many times during the day. The Grand Bretagne was close by, and it had been easy for her to creep to the pier when the boat bell rang. She felt a joy in meeting these people again, a sense of being with friends, a confidence which Lady Ducayne's goodness had never inspired in her. "Oh, you poor darling, how awfully ill you must have been," exclaimed Lotta as the 2 girls embraced. Bella tried to answer, but her voice was choked with tears. "What has been the matter, dear? That horrid influenza, I suppose?" No, I have not been ill. I have only felt a little weaker than I used to be. I don't think the air of Cap Ferrino quite agreed with me. It must have disagreed with you abominably. I never saw such a change in anyone." Wait, it's bothering me that I said abominably, abominably, that's the word. I never such a change in anyone. Do let Herbert doctor you. He is fully qualified, you know. He prescribed forever so many influenza patients at the laundries. They were glad to get advice from an English doctor in a friendly way. "I am sure he must be very clever," faltered Bella, "but there is really nothing the matter. I am not ill, and if I were ill, Lady Ducayne's physician, that dreadful man with the yellow face." Okay. "I would as soon one of the Borgias prescribed for me. I hope you haven't been taking any of his medicines." "No, dear, I have taken nothing. I have never complained of being ill." This was said while they were all 3 walking to the hotel. The Staffords' rooms had been secured in advance, pretty ground-floor rooms, opening into the garden. Lady Ducayne's statelier apartments were on the floor above. "I believe these rooms are just under ours," said Bella. "Then it will be all the easier for you to run down to us," replied Lotta, which was not really the case, as the grand staircase was in the center of the hotel. "Oh, I shall find it easy enough," said Bella. "I'm afraid you'll have too much of my money." "No, God. I'm afraid you'll have too much of my society. Lady Ducayne sleeps away half the day in this warm weather, so I have a good deal of idle time, and I get awfully moped thinking of mother and home." Her voice broke upon the last word. She could not have thought of that poor lodging which went by the name of home more tenderly had it been the most beautiful that art and wealth ever created. She moped and pined in this lovely garden with the sunlit lake and the romantic hills spreading out their beauty before her. She was homesick and she had dreams, or rather, an occasional reoccurrence of that one bad dream with all its strange sensations. It was more like a hallucination than dreaming. The whirring of wheels, the sinking into an abyss, the struggling back to consciousness. She had the dream shortly before she left Cap Farino, but not since she had come to Bellagio, and she began to hope the air in this lake district suited her better, and that those strange sensations would never return. Mr. Stafford wrote a prescription and had it made up at the chemist's near the hotel. It was a powerful tonic, and after 2 bottles and a row or 2 on the lake, and some rambling over the hills and in the meadows where the spring flowers made earth seem paradise, Bella's spirits and looks improved as if by magic. It is a wonderful tonic, she said, but perhaps in her heart of hearts she knew that the doctor's kind voice and the friendly hand that helped her in and out of the boat, and the watchful care that went with her by land and lake, had something to do with her cure. I hope you don't forget that her mother makes mantles, Lotta said, warningly. Or matchboxes. It is just the same thing, so far as I am concerned. You mean that in no circumstances could you think of marrying her? I mean that if ever I love a woman well enough to think of marrying her, riches or rank will count for nothing with me. But I fear your poor friends may not live to be any man's wife. Do you think her so very ill? He sighed and left the question unanswered. One day, while they were gathering wildflowers in an upland meadow, Bella told Mr. Stafford about her bad dream. It is curious only because it is hardly like a dream, she said. I dare say you could find some common sense reason for it. The position of my head on my pillow, or the atmosphere, or something. And then she described her sensations, how in the midst of sleeping there came a sudden sense of suffocation, and then those whirring wheels, so loud, so terrible, and then a blank, and then a coming back to waking consciousness. Have you ever had chloroform given you, by a dentist, for instance? Never. Dr. Paravicini asked me that question one day. Lately? No, long ago, when we were in the train deluxe. Has Dr. Paravicini prescribed for you since you began to feel weak and ill? Oh, he has given me a tonic from time to time, but I hate medicine and took very little of the stuff. And then I am not ill, only weaker than I used to be. I was ridiculously strong and well when I lived at Walworth, and used to take long walks every day. Mother made me take those tramps to Dulwich or Norwood, for fear I should suffer from too much sewing machine. Sometimes, but very seldom, she went with me. She was generally toiling at home while I was enjoying fresh air and exercise. And she was very careful about our food, that, however plain it was, it should be always nourishing and ample. I owe it to her care that I grew up with such a great, strong creature. You don't look great or strong now, you poor dear, said Lotta. I'm afraid Italy doesn't agree with me. Perhaps it is not Italy, but being cooped up with Lady Ducayne that has made you ill. But I am never cooped up. Lady Ducayne is absurdly kind, and lets me roam about or sit in the balcony all day if I like. I have read more novels since I have been with her than in all the rest of my life. Then she is very different from that average old lady, who is usually a slave driver, said Stafford. I wonder why she carries a companion about with her if she has so little need of society. Oh, I am only part of her state. She is inordinately rich, and the salary she gives me doesn't count. Apropos of Dr. Paravicini, I know he is a clever doctor, for he cures my horrid mosquito bites. A little ammonia would do that in the early stage of the mischief, but there are no mosquitoes to trouble you now. Oh, yes, there are. I had a bite just before we left Cap Farino. She pushed up her loose lawn sleeve and exhibited a scar, which he scrutinized intently with a surprised and puzzled look. This is no mosquito bite, he said. Oh, yes it is, unless there are snakes or adders at Camp Farino. It is not a bite at all. You are trifling with me. Miss Rolleston, you have allowed that wretched Italian quack to bleed you. They killed the greatest man in modern Europe that way, remember. How very foolish of you. I was never bled in my life, Mr. Stafford. Nonsense. Let me look at your other arm. Are there any more mosquito bites? Yes. Dr. Paravicini says I have a bad skin for healing, and that the poison acts more virulently with me than with most people. Stafford examined both her arms in the broad sunlight, scars new and old. You have been very badly bitten, Ms. Rolleston, he said, and if ever I find the mosquito, I shall make him smart. But now tell me, my dear girl, on your word of honor, tell me as you would tell a friend who is sincerely anxious for your help and happiness, as you would tell your mother if she were here to question you. Have you no knowledge of any cause for these scars except mosquito bites? No suspicion, even? No, indeed. No, upon my honor. I have never seen a mosquito biting my arm. One never does see the horrid little fiends, but I have heard them trumpeting under the curtains, and I know that I have often had one of the pestilent wretches buzzing about me. Later in the day, Bella and her friends were sitting at tea in the garden, while Lady Ducayne took her afternoon drive with her doctor. How long do you mean to stop with Lady Ducayne, Miss Rolleston? Herbert Stafford asked, after a thoughtful silence, breaking suddenly upon the trivial talk of the two girls. As long as she will go on paying me £25 a quarter. Even if you feel your health breaking down in her service? It is not the service that has injured my health. You can see that I have really nothing to do, to read aloud for an hour or so once or twice a week, to write a letter once in a way to a London tradesman. I shall never have such an easy time with anybody else, and nobody else would give me 100 a year. Then you mean to go on till you break down, to die at your post, like the other two companions? No. If ever I feel seriously ill, really ill, I shall put myself in a train and go back to Walworth without stopping. What about the other two companions? They both died. It was very unlucky for Lady Ducayne. That's why she engaged me. She chose me because I was ruddy and robust. She must feel rather disgusted at my having grown white and weak. By the by, when I told her about the good your tonic has done me, she said she would like to see you and have a little talk with you about her own case. And I should like to see Lady Ducayne. When did she say this? The day before yesterday. Will you ask her if she will see me this evening? With pleasure. I wonder what you will think of her. She looks rather terrible to a stranger, but Dr. Paravicini says she was once a famous beauty. It was nearly 10 o'clock when Mr. Stafford was summoned by message from Lady Ducayne, whose courier came to conduct him to her ladyship's salon. Bella was reading aloud when the visitor was admitted, and he noticed languor in the low, sweet tones, the evident effort. Shut up the book, said the querulous old voice. You are beginning to drawl like Miss Blandy. Stafford saw a small bent figure crouching over the piled-up olive logs, a shrunken old figure in a gorgeous garment of black and crimson brocade, a skinny throat emerging from a mass of old Venetian lace, clasped with diamonds that flashed like fireflies as the trembling old head turned towards him. The eyes that looked at him out of the face were almost as bright as the diamonds, the only living feature in that narrow parchment mask. He had seen terrible faces in the hospital, faces on which disease had set dreadful marks, but he had never seen a face that impressed him so painfully as this withered countenance, with its indescribable horror of death outlived, the face that should have been hidden under a coffin lid years and years ago. God damn. The Italian physician was standing on the other side of the fireplace, smoking a cigarette, and looking down at the little old woman brooding over the hearth as if he were proud of her. Good evening, Mr. Stafford. You can go to your room, Bella, and write your everlasting letter to your mother at Walworth, said Lady Ducayne. I believe she writes a page about every wild flower she discovers in the woods and meadows. I don't know what else she can find to write about, she added, as Bella quietly withdrew to the pretty little bedroom opening out of Lady Ducayne's spacious apartment. Here, as at Cap Farino, she slept in a room adjoining the old lady's. You are a medical man, I understand, Mr. Stafford. I am a qualified practitioner, but I have not begun to practice. You have begun upon my companion, she tells me. I have prescribed for her, certainly, and I am happy to find my prescription has done her good, but I look upon that improvement as temporary. Her case will require more drastic treatment. I do need a little more water. It's been a while. Never mind her case. There is nothing the matter with the girl, absolutely nothing, except girlish nonsense, too much liberty, and not enough work. I understand that 2 of your ladyship's previous companions died of the same disease, said Stafford, looking first at Lady Ducayne, who gave her tremulous old head an impatient jerk, and then at Paravicini, whose yellow complexion had paled a little under Stafford's scrutiny. Don't bother me about my companions, sir, said Lady Ducayne. I sent for you to consult you about myself, not about a parcel of anemic girls. You are young, and medicine is a progressive science, the newspapers tell me. Where have you studied? In Edinburgh and in Paris. 2 good schools. And you know all the newfangled theories, the modern discoveries that remind one of the medieval witchcraft of Albertus Magnus and George Ripley. You have studied hypnotism, electricity, and the transfusion of blood, said Stafford very slowly, looking at Paravicini. Have you made any discovery that teaches you to prolong human life? Any elixir? Any mode of treatment? I want my life prolonged, young man. That man there has been my physician for 30 years. He does all he can to keep me alive, after his lights. He studies all the new theories of all the scientists, but he is old. He gets older every day. His brain power is going. He is bigoted, prejudiced, can't receive new ideas, can't grapple with new systems. He will let me die if I am not on my guard against him. You are of an unbelievable ingratitude, Eccellenza, said Paravicini. Oh, you needn't complain. I have paid you thousands to keep me alive. Every year of my life has swollen your hoards. You know there is nothing to come to you when I am gone. My whole fortune is left to endow a home for indigent women of quality who have reached their 90th year. Come, Mr. Stafford, I am a rich woman. Give me a few years more in the sunshine, a few years more above ground, and I will give you the price of a fashionable London practice. I will set you up at the West End. How old are you, Lady Ducayne? I was born the day Louis the 16th was guillotined. Oh, now I have to Google that. I was born the day Louis the 16th was guillotined, and I think you have had your share of the sunshine and the pleasures of the earth, and that you should spend your few remaining days in repenting your sins and trying to make atonement for the young lives that have been sacrificed to your love of life. What do you mean by that, sir? Oh, Lady Ducayne, need I put your wickedness and your physician's still greater wickedness in plain words? The poor girl who is now in your employment has been reduced from robust health to a condition of absolute danger by Dr. Paravicini's experimental surgery, and I have no doubt those other 2 young women who broke down in your service were treated by him in the same manner. I could take upon myself to demonstrate, by most convincing evidence, to a jury of medical men, that Dr. Paravicini has been bleeding Miss Rolliston after putting her under chloroform at intervals ever since she has been in your service. The deterioration in the girl's health speaks for itself. The lancet marks upon the girl's arms are unmistakable, and her description of a series of sensations, which she calls a dream, points unmistakably to the administration of chloroform while she was sleeping. A practice so nefarious, so murderous, must, if exposed, result in a sentence only less severe than the punishment of murder. Pausing to show you possibly the last little... No, here's a little picture. Look at that. Look at that. Both of them together. It's very important that we see the illustrations. I laugh, said Paravicini, with an airy motion of his skinny fingers. I laugh at once at your theories and at your threats. I, Paravicini Leopold, have no fear that the law can question anything I have done. Take the girl away. Let me hear no more of her, cried Lady Ducayne, in the thin, old voice, which so poorly matched the energy and fire of the wicked old brain that guided its utterances. Let her go back to her mother. I want no more girls to die in my service. There are girls enough and to spare in the world, God knows. If you ever engage another companion, or take another English girl into your service, Lady Ducayne, I will make all England ring with the story of your wickedness. I want no more girls. I don't believe in his experiments. They have been full of danger for me as well as for the girl. An air bubble, and I should be gone. I'll have no more of his dangerous quackery. I'll find some new man, a better man than you, sir, a discoverer like Pasteur or Virchow, a genius, to keep me alive. Take your girl away, young man. Marry her if you like. I'll write her a check for £1,000 and let her go and live on beef and beer and get strong and plump again. I'll have no more such experiments. Do you hear, Paravicini? She screamed vindictively, the yellow, wrinkled face distorted with fury, the eyes glaring at him. The Staffords carried Bella Rolleston off to Varese next day, she very loth to leave Lady Ducayne, whose liberal salary afforded such help for the dear mother. Herbert Stafford insisted, however, treating Bella as coolly as if he had been the family physician. She had been given over wholly to his care. Do you suppose your mother would let you stop here to dine? He asked. If Mrs. Rolleston knew how ill you are, she would come post-haste to fetch you. I think I said dine. Do you suppose your mother should let you stop here to die? I shall never be well again till I get back to Walworth, answered Bella, who was low-spirited and inclined to tears this morning, a reaction after her good spirits of yesterday. We'll try a week or two at Varese first, said Stafford. When you can walk halfway up Monte Generoso without palpitation of the heart, you shall go back to Walworth. Clearly, I know my Italian cities. Poor mother, how glad she will be to see me, and how sorry that I've lost such a good place. This conversation took place on the boat when they were leaving Bellagio. Lotta had gone to her mother's room at 7 o'clock that morning, long before Lady Ducayne's withered eyelids had opened to the daylight. Before even Francine, the French maid, was astir, and had helped to pack a Gladstone bag with essentials, and hustled Bella downstairs and out of doors before she could make any strenuous resistance. It's all right, Lotta assured her. Herbert had a good talk with Lady Ducayne last night, and it was settled for you to leave this morning. She doesn't like the invalids, you see. No, sighed Bella. She doesn't like invalids. It was very unlucky that I should break down, just like Miss Thompson and Miss Blandy. At any rate, you are not dead like them, answered Lotta, and my brother says you are not going to die. It seemed rather a dreadful thing to be dismissed in that offhand way, without a word of farewell from her employer. I wonder what Miss Torpinter will say when I go to her for another situation, Bella speculated ruefully, while she and her friend were breakfasting on board the steamer. Perhaps you may never want another situation, said Stafford. You mean that I may never be well enough to be useful to anybody? No, I don't mean anything of the kind. It was after dinner at Varese, when Bella had been induced to take a whole glass of Chianti, and quite sparkled after that unaccustomed stimulant, that Mr. Stafford produced a letter from his pocket. I forgot to give you Lady Ducayne's letter of adieu, he said. What, did she write to me? I am so glad. I hated to leave her in such a cool way, for after all she was very kind to me, and if I didn't like her, it was only because she was too dreadfully old. She tore open the envelope. The letter was short and to the point. Goodbye, child. Go and marry your doctor. I enclose a farewell gift for your trousseau, Adeline Ducayne. £100? A whole year's salary? No. Why, it's for a check for 1,000, cried Bella. What a generous old soul. She really is the dearest old thing. She just missed being very dear to you, Bella, said Stafford. He had dropped into the use of her Christian name while they were on board the boat. It seemed natural now that she was to be in his charge till they all three went back to England. I shall take upon myself the privileges of an elder brother till we land at Dover, he said. After that, well, it must be as you please. The question of their future relations must have been satisfactorily settled before they crossed the Channel, for Bella's new letter to her mother communicated 3 startling facts. First, that the enclosed check for $1,000 was to be invested in debenture stock in Mrs. Rolliston's name and was to be her very own income and principal for the rest of her life. Next, that Bella was going home to Walworth immediately. And last, that she was going to be married to Mr. Herbert Stafford in the following autumn. And I am sure you will adore him, Mother, as much as I do, wrote Bella. It is all good Lady Ducayne's doing. I could never have married if I had not secured that little nest egg for you. Herbert says we shall be able to add to it as the years go by, and that wherever we live, there shall be always a room in our house for you. The word mother-in-law has no terrors for him. End of that. Good Lady Ducayne by Mary... oh no. Mary E. Braddon. Fun little story. I enjoyed it the second time around too. I hope you did too. We got two more. A check for 1,000 illustration. And then this little one with a bat hovering over the good Lady Ducayne. 'Cause she's a vampire. Could you tell? It's a little suspicious how often the concept of foreigners and suspicious old ladies is brought into these kinds of stories. An interesting little study on who we decide to make monsters and who we can agree to be monstrous. I hope you guys had fun. I had fun. Medusa possibly had fun down there on her little bed staring at me. Hi, girl. Okay, I do these lives once a week so far, sticking to it. Knock on wood, I'll be back next week, 6 o'clock, Sunday, Eastern Standard Time. And what else? I have other videos to watch, other lives, of course, and 2 long-form videos about singular books, if you'd like to check them out. Please subscribe, and comment. I always forget to say that. Don't forget to do those things, possibly. And I will see you next week with shorter stories, probably, assuming everything goes well. Thank you for being here. And, yeah, goodbye.